War Machine. Jonathan Copenhaver, aka War Machine, started gaining attention in the MMA world after appearing on The Ultimate Fighter Season 6. The fans loved him, and he was a good fighter, so Dana White signed him. Things were looking good for him. But everything changed in 2014 when he beat the brakes off his girlfriend, Christy Mack. He showed up at her house, found her with another man, and snapped. Christy was beaten so badly, she suffered 18 broken bones, a fractured rib, a ruptured liver, and had several teeth knocked out. She was nearly killed. War Machine fled but was captured after a nationwide manhunt. In 2017, he was convicted on 29 felony counts, including kidnapping and sexual assault, and sentenced to life. Cain Velasquez. Cain Velasquez is a former two-time UFC heavyweight champion and one of the most respected fighters in the sport. Known for his cardio, wrestling, and relentless pressure, he dominated legends like Brock Lesnar and Junior Dos Santos. Outside the cage, Cain is a humble dad, not the type of guy you'd expect to end up behind bars. But in 2022, Cain was arrested after a high-speed car chase where he fired multiple shots at a truck carrying Harry Gorlarte, the man accused of molesting his 4-year-old son at a daycare. Just days before the shooting, Harry had been arrested for the alleged abuse, but was released shortly without bail. So when Cain got the news, he flipped out and went after Harry. The chase lasted 11 miles. Cain shot into the truck several times. Harry wasn't hit, but his stepfather, who was driving, was shot twice. Cain later said he acted out of anger and admitted it was the wrong way to respond. He was charged with attempted murder and several gun-related felonies. In 2024, he pled no contest and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. He also filed a lawsuit against Harry and his family daycare for negligence and sexual battery. Jon Jones. Jon Jones, arguably the greatest fighter in UFC history, became the youngest champion ever at just 23. But outside the octagon, his life had been full of chaos. It started in 2012 when he crashed his Bentley while driving drunk. That was the first of many run-ins with the law. In 2015, things took a darker turn. Jones ran a red light and crashed into a car driven by a pregnant woman. He ran from the scene, leaving behind drugs, cash, and a pipe. He was later arrested and stripped of his title. But the pattern did not stop. Once he got out of jail, he was caught drag racing and faced more DUI charges. And 2020, police found him drunk in his car with a loaded gun, shooting in the air for no clear reason. Then in 2021, just hours after being honored in the UFC Hall of Fame, he was arrested again. This time for allegedly assaulting his fiancée in a Las Vegas hotel. Conor McGregor. Former two-division UFC champ, knockout artist, and trash talk legend. But his life outside the cage has been packed with legal trouble. In 2018, things exploded when Conor attacked a bus full of fighters at a UFC media event in Brooklyn. Days earlier, Khabib and his team had a heated run-in with one of Conor's friends and teammates. They cornered and confronted him for talking bad about Khabib online. When Conor heard, he flew from Ireland to New York with a crew of 20, stormed the arena, and threw a dolly through the window of the bus. 2 fighters were injured by the broken glass, and the whole thing was caught on camera. Conor was arrested, charged with assault and criminal mischief, and spent the night in jail before posting bail. In court, he accepted a plea deal in exchange for dropping the other charges. He avoided jail time but was ordered to do 5 days of community service and attend anger management. After that, the incidents kept coming. In 2021, he punched an older man in a Dublin bar after the man refused a shot of his whiskey. Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal made a name for himself and organized street fights that were recorded and posted on YouTube. He became a legend, and that's where Masvidal first showed off his toughness and speed and slick boxing. He brought that same energy to the UFC, knocking out Ben Askren in just 5 seconds. But outside the cage, Jorge never lost that street mentality. After months of trash talk and a heated rivalry with Colby Covington, the two finally fought. Colby dominated and didn't hold back afterward, trashing Jorge in interviews. A few weeks later, Jorge waited outside a Miami steakhouse, spotted Colby leaving, and punched him in the mouth. Colby's tooth got chipped and he claimed brain damage. Jorge turned himself in and spent a short time in custody before being released on bond. He later pleaded guilty to misdemeanor battery, and the felony charges were dropped, allowing him to avoid any additional jail time. Cedric Dumas. Cedricus Dumas is a rising middleweight in the UFC, known for his raw talent and street-tough background. He grew up in Florida with a rough upbringing and was consistently getting into trouble before ever stepping into the UFC spotlight. Dumas had already been arrested 13 times. In 2016, he was arrested for robbery with a deadly weapon. Reports say he and another man jumped someone and stole their belongings. He served time, got out, and said he was ready to leave the streets behind and focus on MMA. Since joining the UFC, Dumas has been open about his past and claimed he had changed. But just a few days ago, after his last fight at UFC 314, he got arrested again. And this time, it's serious. On April 28th, he was arrested in Florida on charges including home invasion, robbery, battery, and drug possession. The incident involved his ex-girlfriend, who told police Dumas forced his way into her home, ripped a necklace off her neck, attacked her, and took her phone. When deputies found him, he was hiding in a dog crate inside a shed. He's now being held on a $500,000 bond. This marks his 14th arrest since 2014. Jason Mayhem Miller. Jason Mayhem Miller was once one of the UFC's most entertaining personalities, known for his chaotic walkouts and relentless trash talk. But when his fighting career faded, his personal life spiraled into chaos. After being cut from the UFC in 2012, his name started showing up in headlines for all the wrong reasons. One of his first major incidents came in August 2012, where he was found completely naked inside a church. Fire extinguishers had been sprayed throughout the building, and a bunch of stuff was destroyed. Police found him asleep on a couch and charged him with burglary and vandalism. The case was eventually dropped after the church pastor decided not to press charges, hoping instead to help Miller find God. But this was just the beginning. In 2014, deputies showed up to serve him an arrest warrant for alleged domestic violence and stalking. Instead of surrendering, Mayhem locked himself inside his house, leading to a full SWAT standoff that lasted hours. The funniest part was that Jason was live tweeting the entire situation, posting updates like, "They're trying to get in," and "I'm gonna take a nap." He was eventually taken into custody without anyone getting hurt. Things kept getting worse. In 2015, he was arrested again after allegedly threatening a woman with a knife during a domestic dispute. When police arrived, he reportedly refused to come out and had to be forcibly removed from the house. Later that same year, he made headlines again for a courtroom meltdown where he was yelling at a judge and had to be restrained and arrested in the middle of a hearing. Over the next few years, the arrests piled up. Assault, resisting arrest, battery, vandalism, adding up to over a dozen charges in less than 5 years. Then in 2021, he was charged once again with felony domestic violence for allegedly breaking a woman's ribs. Hermes Franco. Hermes Franco was once a top lightweight contender in the UFC. He fought during the mid-2000s. In 2007, he fought for the UFC lightweight title against Sean Shirk. Though he lost, Franco had made a name for himself as a legit threat in the division. But after leaving the UFC, things took a dark turn. In 2011, Franco was arrested in Oregon and charged with multiple accounts of sexual abuse involving a minor. He eventually pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The case shocked the MMA world. Franco was respected for his skills, but his actions completely destroyed that image. After serving his sentence, he tried to make a comeback in smaller promotions, but the stigma never left. He was no longer seen as a fighter, just a convicted sex offender trying to fight again. Chelson. Chelson was one of the best trash talkers in UFC history. He could back it up. He fought for titles in both the middleweight and light heavyweight divisions and gave Anderson Silva one of his toughest fights ever. But behind the mic, Chel had his share of legal trouble. In 2011, Chelson got in trouble for being part of a money laundering and mortgage fraud case. This happened back in 2006 when he was working as a real estate agent in Oregon. He helped set up a fake house sale where the buyer wasn't actually buying the home for real, they were just part of a scam. The plan was to trick the bank into giving the fake buyer a loan by making everything look normal on paper. In the deal, $69,000 was supposed to go toward fixing up the home, but instead that money was secretly sent to a company connected to the fake buyer. The company was set up to look like a construction business, but it didn't do any real work. It was just there to make the money transfer seem legit. Sonen's role was helping move that money and cover up what really happened. He didn't go to jail, but he had to pay a $10,000 fine and was put on probation for 2 years. He also lost his real estate license, and the UFC also suspended him for a while. Years later, in 2021, he was back in the news, this time for a violent incident in Las Vegas. Chael was accused of attacking multiple people in a hotel hallway. He was hit with 11 charges, including felony battery. He spent the night in jail, but the charges were later dismissed, and he ended up paying a $750 fine. Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson is one of the most unorthodox and unpredictable fighters the UFC has ever seen. He is the former interim lightweight champ with a 12-fight win streak. But outside the cage, Tony's life has had its share of problems, especially in recent years. In May 2023, Tony was arrested for DUI in Hollywood. He crashed his truck into two parked cars outside a nightclub, flipping the vehicle onto its side. According to reports, he refused to field sobriety test, smelled like alcohol, and was very uncooperative. Luckily, no one was seriously hurt. He was arrested at the scene and taken to jail, but was released a few hours later on $30,000 bail. This wasn't the first time Tony's name came up in troubling headlines. In 2019, his wife filed a restraining order citing concerns about his mental health, though no criminal charges came from that.